Hello, everybody. Today we're doing a mini lesson on archetypes. I love researching this topic, okay? I am not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, so I am not an expert on any of this. However, like I said, I love researching this topic and I find it fascinating. And as a tarot enthusiast, I'll say, some of us are already aware that the tarot that these are great archetypes to work with, okay? So I call it a mini lesson because I'm not going to go too in depth, like way in depth about what they are, but I'll go over the dynamics of it, and then we'll get into an activity I've come up with at the very end of this, which I'll explain. So Archetypes was a concept that Carl Gustav Jung had come up with, okay? And he believed that the archetypes were like, they're models of people, like their behaviors and personality, okay? Now he suggested that these were like inborn, so kind of inherited, and that we all have them in our collective unconscious, okay? And I'll explain what that is in a minute. And let's look at the human psyche for a second in this is Jung's interpretation of the human psyche, okay? There are three components: the ego, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious, okay? And I'm going to explain what those are, okay? According to Jung. The ego is the conscious mind, okay? This is what we know on a day-to-day basis, okay? This is the things we can tap into, right? Then there's a personal unconscious, which the ego they kind of talk to one another, the ego and the personal unconscious. Because your personal unconscious is the memories, your personal memories, okay? And images that you have found to be insignificant in your life. So you kind of shove them down into your personal unconscious, so to speak. And with the ego being able to speak to your personal unconscious, the ego is what you project, right? It's kind of like your persona, right? That persona means mask, so that's the mask you wear to be socially acceptable, right? And if he states that the ego and the personal unconscious can speak to one another on an unconscious level, then that to me could mean that we've shoved insignificant things in our lives down into our personal unconscious. But then the ego might say, oh, well, what's significant that we've plugged down in there that we can blast people with today? That's my interpretation of it. And then we have the collective unconscious, okay? Now those are images and elements, universal elements that Jung believed we all have, okay? Images, inherited, inborn images that all humans possess. And they're way down in the collective unconscious, okay? In the abyss of it all. And I don't believe we can tap into that, but the way we tap into it is by these universal symbols, okay? This is why the tarot works, right? They're images that we all have seen somewhere, and that's how we tap into our personal unconscious. Now, again, it's unconscious, people, so we may not be conscious of it, but when we see these images, they bring up certain emotions, certain feelings, right, that make sense, that we can find connections to people through these unconscious or this collective unconscious, the images that we see. And I believe that that's why tarot is such a great tool. Now I want to say a quote by Jung, and it says, all the most powerful ideas in history go back to archetypes. Now if you think of that for a minute, and think Joseph Campbell for a second, and think of the outline that he made up of the hero's journey. Well, why does a lot of stories that we read still today, take the Odyssey. That was written so long ago, but it's still considered we can find and plug the outline to the hero's journey right into the Odyssey, okay? we're right there with Odysseus, and then we can link that to other stories. It's so prevalent to day-to-day life because of the common images, right? And this is kind of what archetypes are, right? That are weighting down in the collective unconscious. We're able to plug and feel the emotions and pull the feelings out of these certain symbols and images because they're down in the collective unconscious, okay? Now, to start, I'm going to say that Jung had come up with 4 major archetypes that make up everyone, okay? Again, endless number of archetypes here, okay? Endless. But he says that there are 4 major archetypes that everyone has, that everyone possesses. And that is the persona, the self, the shadow, and the anima or the animus. Okay, now the anima and animus reside in the shadow. That's your opposite sex quality that's within you. So I identify as female. So mine would be an animus, a male psyche that resides down within in my psyche. Okay, and I don't want to get too in-depth on these 4 because that's not really the nature of this video. Now, let's branch out a minute, okay? Those are the 4. Now, I'm not going to define those. You can do that on your own, and I'll list the 4 in the description for everyone. But I want to kind of dive a little bit deeper. Jung had also come up with 12 archetypes that he believed you could find one that like dominates those 4, okay? What I just said, the 4 that I just said. These 12 are, I think people call them character archetypes, and you can plug in movies with them, people that you know into these archetypes. And like I said before, endless number of archetypes, people, okay? Way, way out. But I think he did come up with the 4. We all possess those. Then there's 12 character archetypes that we could probably find one that dominates the 4 in our psyche that are there already, okay? That's the work. Fascinating, okay? So I'm going to list, like I said, I'm going to list the 12 in kind of an unconventional way that I'm going to try to make this as unconfusing as possible for you, okay? And I want to stress the fact that Jung had come up with these 12 archetypes by studying many cultures, okay? So many histories, many civilizations, and he had come up with the 12 that, like I said, I keep saying endless number, okay? But he had come up with these character archetypes by studying various histories, cultures, okay, civilizations, and had come up with these that dominate everyone and all civilizations. He found all 12 of these in every single pocket of people, okay? This is my opinion. And he states that these are imprints, okay? These archetypes are imprints that are buried in our unconscious, okay? And we all have them, like I said before. Okay, so I've drawn this, okay, to go over the 12 with you, okay? But I've plugged them in to 3 other categories, okay? Because this is some information that I found in a couple of articles that was fascinating, okay? So, I hope that everyone can see. I have left this in a file for you to download and kind of go over it with me. So these are the 12, right? And there will be 4 in the ego section, 4 in the self section, and 4 in the soul / I think that the soul is the shadow. I believe that that's where the soul resides, okay? So, I can list them off, right? But I want to say that there's an ego, a self, and a soul, right? So that would be the hero, the magician, and the outlaw. Those 3, the ego, self, and soul of all of these, okay, let's just say, they have one goal in life, like a main goal. And I'm going to go over all 4 of what those would be. Again, I've left this in a file for you to download. So I'm kind of going to read the 12, and then I'll kind of go over what these other groups' main goals are, because that leads into our activity. Okay, the hero, the caregiver, the innocent, the everyman, the ruler, the jester, the magician, the sage, the creator, the lover, the outlaw, and the explorer, okay? And I want to, now that we have a rudimentary knowledge of what the 12 are, again, I'm not going to get too in-depth. We could really stay here all night and plug movies and people you know into these 12 archetypes, okay? That's not the purpose of this video. So, again, here's the triangle, and I want to kind of go over what these sections' main goals are. Because, like I said, it's going to lead us into our activity. Okay, and I'm going to kind of read my notes along with this. So, the hero, the magician, and the outlaw, their main goal is to leave their mark on the world. Makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Okay, the next is the caregiver, the ruler, and the creator. Their main goal is to provide structure for the world. Stability, right? Makes sense, right? And then there is the innocent, the sage, and the explorer. Their main goal is to yearn for paradise. They yearn to be in paradise. That's their main goal. And then we have the everyman, the jester, and the lover. And their main goal is to connect with others, okay? And I want to look a little bit in depth with just these three, just to kind of give you a little bit more of an understanding of them, okay? So think of the jester, okay? Think the fool, right, in King Arthur's court. He's juggling and he's doing everything in his power to entertain the people of the court, right? But he can almost roast the king with no consequence, okay? So he's almost that person that you know that's just the obnoxious, right? He's the one that will do anything for a friend to have that type of connection, a friendship connection. Well then, the everyman, in some of the articles I've read, it called that the orphan. Well, if it's the orphan, he's looking for connection in a parental sense, right? He's looking for mom and dad. So that's a connection. And then the lover, of course, is looking for a connection in a life partner. And their main goal is to connect with others and find a way to connect by all means necessary, in my opinion, like the jester, okay? So that kind of gives you a glimpse of how the three can kind of coalesce, right? So on to the activity. As I said before, the tarot is a great way to find out some archetypes, okay? It's full of archetypes and full of archetypal situations. Think of the Tower card, okay? And so, along with this triangle I have drawn, in the file that you can download, I've left a tarot spread, and it's a 4-card tarot spread. And I've left 4 questions that go along with these main goals of these archetypes, because I feel like they are great questions to ask the tarot, okay? I'm going to go over them, and you feel free to tag me in posts if you participate. I'll love that, okay? So the first question, how can I provide structure to my world? Great question, right? For the tarot. Second, how can I leave my mark on the world? And again, you could add the word today. You could add the word this week, right? It could be an undisclosed amount of time, right? You could keep doing this. So, just to clarify. Third question, how can I connect to those around me? You could leave off around me, right? We all want to connect. We all want that sense of community, right? That sense of connection. And you can add the word in my community or in my home. How can I connect with people in my home? How can I connect with my family? You could plug in something specific that you need an answer to. And then the fourth and final question is, how can I value my paradise? Now, I said that those three, okay, the innocent, the sage, and the explorer yearn for paradise, right? Well, you can yearn for something all you want. So I want to ask the tarot, how can I value my paradise? Like I said, you can want something, why do you want it? And once you get it, are you going to value it? Is it going to be enough? Some of us say no, right? Oftentimes we get what we want and it's not enough. Or we don't think it is in our brain. We want to keep doing the work, right? So we kind of feel unsatisfied a little bit. That you're going to build or that you have built. So that's the final question. Like I said, I've left this in a file for you to download, and I encourage everyone to participate because this was so fun coming up with, okay? Now, we are going to dive more into archetypes as this is a topic I love to research about, okay? But this was just kind of a mini lesson. I'm going to say that in a lot of my videos. Mini lessons, okay? Anyway, I hope that this was fun and I hope it was informative, and I'm not an expert, so if you have anything you want to correct me about or any articles that I should read about this, I'm always looking for that new information. So I hope everyone has a good day.